morning. Welcome to your April 24th regular council meeting. We've got an open mic, a couple of people registered this morning. Who did you have first? Mr. Hanson. Join us at the table, please, and just make sure the mic is on. Councillor Billingsley is usually pretty good at that. Perfect.
Good morning. I'm sort of hoarse this morning. I don't know what it is, snow mold or something. I'm here to talk about my property taxes. I got sick in 2012-13, and I lived off my savings until about 2015. And anyways, I got behind on my taxes. Started in about 16. I was paying some, but not the whole deal. Anyways, at the time I was getting charged 1% interest, and I talked to the people, Barbara something is her name, and she said, well, just, try and pay. And I said, well, I don't want to be here. It's just the way it was. It was a time where it was right between the end of my savings and my disability pension, so there was a lapse there took some time to get that disability pension. Anyways, I got behind to a point where I got a letter in the mail here just recently saying that I owed $9,263.93, and I should payment by March 24th of $5,053, and of course that never happened because I just don't have that money. I had talked to Barbara 2-3 years before this about all this, and the interest had gone up to 2% then, and it was getting tougher, and so I talked to her and asked her if there's a way we could, leave the interest at 1%, or because it was my position financially wasn't any better. So consequently, she didn't. Now, since then till now, they've raised the interest rate up to 15%. I've been paying $150 a month for the last 2.5 years, whatever it's been, which is really more than my tax year, but the interest is eating it all, and in fact making it worse because, I go from 9,200 something to whatever my tax is going to be this year, $1,500 added on to that plus interest, and I'm just here, I guess. I'm told that, I was told by Barbara that you must know somebody you can borrow money from, your kids or your family or something. Well, I'm a single gentleman, my kids all live in the United States. They've all got young families. I would never ask them to borrow $10,000, excuse me. And so, I wouldn't lie to anybody and say, can I borrow $10,000? I can't pay you back, but, so it's something where I don't know what to do. So I guess what I'm asking is some way where we can alleviate that interest, because I paid, for my calculations, $7,580 in taxes, and so there's only about a $1,300 or $1,400 difference without all the interest charged on the account. So I guess I'm at a position where I don't know what to do. I want you to help me out, thank God, to get me here anyways, because I was told by Barbara that there's nothing she could do, and we made a mandate, we could raise the interest to whatever we want, She was a pretty frustrating person to deal with. So anyways, that's why I'm here. I don't want to waste your time, but I can go on. Excuse me. So that's kind of what I'm asking. If there's something that could be done, because there's ready to take my house to send it to tax sale, and they say I don't have nowhere to go. So it scares me a little bit. I know that we've got a new homeless shelter coming, but don't want to be the first guest there. So,
Did anybody make you aware of a seniors property tax deferral program?
no.
No? Okay. If it's okay, can I leave this with our administration to talk to you about?
Certainly.
Historically, council hasn't waived penalty fees for late taxes, but I'll leave it with my administration to go over the senior deferral tax program with you, if that's okay.
Yes, it would be
And
fine.
yeah, and if at that time you can't come to an agreement, then just reach out to me and I'll give you next steps on what you can do.
Okay.
Okay?
Well, I just feel even if the interest, when it started, it was 1% and 2%. I mean, that's fair enough for somebody that's not paying their bills, but I've never, I've always come and talked to the folks in the opposition, and I'm just, like I say, I just got nowhere, and it come to this point where I'm gonna come and, it's not the most, see, it's a bit embarrassing having to come and ask that of a few people, but it is what it is. So,
Yeah. No need to be embarrassed at all. And that's why we have the open mic portion of the council meetings, is so that people can come in and have the opportunity to speak with council, make their request, or let us know something that they feel could be different.
okay,
All right, so I'll leave it with my administration if that's okay.
that would be awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't go very far. I just live a couple blocks away. I walk by here all the time, so, or I used to, but since I've been breathing very well, I haven't, so. But no, that'd be awesome. Like, I would truly appreciate anything that you might be able to do. So, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, if you can't come to an agreement or something isn't working out for you, reach out to me and we'll see what else we can do. If it's coming back and speaking to council, at least you have the option to make the request.
Okay.
If what our administration can offer isn't going to work for you.
Okay, thank you guys so much for
Yeah.
your time.
No problem.
I appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
I'll get out of your hair.
You're welcome. Mr. Haywood? Councillor Aberley.
May I be excused for pecuniary interests, please?
Okay, so I'm here to ask the city to do a little road closure on Main Street for we want to put on the Heritage Museum. I'm here representing the Heritage Museum today, one of my many hats. And we want to put on a Heritage Egg Market on June 10th, 2023, from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. We will host a variety of vendors, including local businesses and organizations. There will be a community stage with artists and performers. And all of these things will showcase our local talent in Wetaskiwin and region. We are asking for you to close Main Street between 50th Street and 52nd Street and the small section of 51st Street from the old Civic Center alley behind Cosmic and the Civic Center to behind the bank, Bank of Montreal. From 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. on that day, on June 10th. And we're also asking for city staff to place barricades at all necessary stops along the way. And at the same time, inviting peace officers, the fire department, and any other city department that may wish to be involved. All city departments and the fire department will be given a free vendor table or area to do their things. So yes, that's basically our ask, and everything else is in the letter that we had provided to you. Are there any questions?
Good. I'll open it up to questions now, and if there's a will of council to move forward with that road closure, they'll make a motion later on in the council meeting, and then they'll direct administration. So I'll open up to questions now, and then you don't have to stay for the whole meeting.
Perfect, thank
You're
you.
welcome. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Dawn. Dawn, are you going to use the street and Jubilee Park, or just the street?
It's just the street, and this is not for Pride, this is for the Heritage Museum.
No,
So this is just from basically TD Bank. So we would allow traffic on 50th Street and 52nd Street. We just want to close down Main Street from where the TD Bank and the Fresh Grill are to where the credit union and whatever the Socket Law Office
Yeah.
is. Yeah, and then just that little section of 51st Street between the alleys, just to have a little breezeway where we can have a stage set up in the center.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome. Anything further? I'll leave it up to council to add it to new business if they wish, and then if that's the case and a motion is passed, then administration will reach out to you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hope you all have a great day.
You as well. Looking for an adoption of the agenda. Sue.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could we add rural renewal application update?
I'm sorry, repeat that, please.
Rural renewal application update.
Thank you.
And also Kevin Lonsdale resignation.
Anything else? Councillor Blatz.
I would also like to add to the agenda the Heritage Museum road closure.
And I will add the session for governance. Thank you.
Sorry, what was that?
Governance session. So we've got agenda additions of rural renewal application update as 15C. The Kevin Lonsdale resignation is 15D. Heritage Museum road closure 15E. And governance session is 15F. Looking for a motion to adopt as amended. Councillor Billingsley.
So moved.
Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Item 6, consent agenda. Councillor Blatz.
I move the City Council accepts the consent agenda as presented without debate. April 11th, 2023, regular council meeting minutes, council committee reports and attendance, council action task summary as of April 1st, 2023.
Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Move into committee of the whole if we've got anything. Not today. Item 10, staff reports for decision.
Good morning, Council. So the purpose of this report is to ask Council to rescind two motions, 063/22 and motion 078/22. The first motion I mentioned is for the disposition of 1.3 acres of a portion of Plan 872-1715, Block 9, Lot 27 MR, also known as Kinsman Park, and where the Jesus Cares Christian Fellowship Church is. The other motion was a motion made on February 28th of 2022 to table the removal of municipal reserve designation from that 1.3 acre portion. So administration will retain the site and continue to lease it to Jesus Cares Christian Fellowship rather than dispose of it, and the site will retain its municipal reserve designation. The original request was made to address a lease with the Jesus Cares Christian Fellowship that was up for renewal. The request to rescind these motions retain the land until the municipal development plan and the parks master plan are completed. These documents will enable a fully informed decision about the disposal of parkland, ensuring that any disposal supports the city's most current strategic direction. The city's needs and priorities may change based on the new municipal development plan and the updated parks master plan. Continuing to lease the building and parking lot to Jesus Cares Christian Fellowship will ensure that the current use is able to continue. The city administration will revisit the lease agreement in 2023 to ensure it meets with current best practice. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Councillor Billingsley.
Excuse me, thank you. My question is to administration. The current lease and the new lease that would be going forward, how was the lease rate arrived at?
Through the chair to Councillor Billingsley, we don't know anybody that was here when that was done is no longer here.
So going forward, will the lease be at market value or will it be based on the old lease?
Yes, it will be at market value. We're actually going to use the facility lease policy that was previously approved as a guide, and then we would make recommendations and bring the agreement back to council before it's executed.
Thank you.
Councillor Nielsen.
Through the chair to administration, I guess two questions or two-part question. Given the concerns, why is there a reluctance to move ahead with the initial recommendation? For example, how would the parks master plan change anything as the land is currently unavailable as a park area? And secondarily, how would the MDP potentially change?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, when we originally went out to the community, there was a big resistance to what was previously planned for the park and what their understanding of the future of this park was. And so I think it's really important for us to complete the MDP and look at the parks master plan to make sure all that public engagement is done and that there's a clear understanding of what this park space will look like moving forward. And that will include the subdivision of this parcel to be removed. So we want to do a lot more public engagement and really get out to the community and make sure that there's a common understanding of what's going to happen here.
Sue, when would you expect to see this public engagement occur? Like how soon?
I would probably hazard a guess that later this year. We have a new manager for planning and development starting in June. I would anticipate that she would have a plan together by Q3 or 4 of this year, and it would likely be started next year.
So would the expectation be that the Parks Master Plan and the NDP are, what is the process, I guess, or the order in which work will be done with regard to moving ahead with this? So is it public engagement first, or is it looking at the MDP and the Parks Master Plan first?
Well, the MDP is almost complete, so that would go first. And then I believe once the new manager gets in, she can have a look at what was done already related to this park specifically and develop out a public engagement plan. The Parks Master Plan isn't scheduled right now, and it would be a request of council with funding attached to it. So that's probably down much later down the road, but we do need to do the public engagement piece first to find out what the concerns are specific to this park.
And the timeline for the lease is when?
It expired last year.
So, from a timeline perspective, through public engagement and reviewing the two documents you've talked about being done later this year, are we signing a short-term lease, or are we signing a long-term lease, which then binds us to this situation, regardless of what the MDP and the Parks Master Plan says?
My suggestion would be a 5-year lease with an option to exit with notice, like all of our agreements have.
And notice would be what kind of a timeline?
Well, we would have to look at what's reasonable and fair. I think in a situation like this, it would have to be at least a year.
Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for information, the city owned the building where they are, and the Kinsmen were using it, and then the Kinsmen Club just deteriorated. Their membership went way down, and rather than the city owning the building, Jesus Cares Christian Fellowship came to the city and said, we'd like to continue to meet there. And so they got a very reasonable lease agreement, and were, because they didn't have very many people, they had about 40 people in their church at that point in time. So the city was being somewhat benevolent, but at the same time, the building was going to be used and not be deteriorated. So I think we were very generous with the first lease that we gave them because we wanted to see them succeed. Thank you.
Go ahead, Sue.
Through the chair to council, I just want to caution on what we might remember happened, because the evidence that we've collected shows something different than that.
I move that, excuse me, I move that City Council rescind motion 063/22.
Sorry. Any questions? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried unanimously.
I move that City Council rescind motion 078/22.
Moved by Councillor Billingsley. Any further discussion? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Also carried unanimously.
And finally, I move that City Council directs administration to renegotiate the lease with Jesus Cares Christian Fellowship for up to a 5-year term.
Moved by Councillor Billingsley. Any discussion? Councillor Nielsen.
I'd like to make amendment to that last motion. I would like to see the inclusion of a statement that indicates, that includes an exit clause with sufficient notice. I'd like to ensure that that's in the motion.
Can you define sufficient notice?
I would defer to Sue. I think she said potentially a year.
Do you want that in the
Sure.
motion?
Yes, please.
Councillor Billingsley.
Would it necessarily need to be there, because that lease then would come back to council anyway? Excuse me. And from there, we could massage it the way we saw fit. I mean, if it's there, it's there.
But if we want direction now, and then we're not going back and forth with an agreement.
Fair enough.
If that's the will of council, we'll have it now, it can get done, and then it doesn't have to go back to
Sure.
the two parties. I'll just wait for the amendment to come up, and then we can vote on that, and then we can vote on the motion. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question to administration. Don't most lease agreements have an exit clause in them?
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, they do now.
As per our new policy. Common sense isn't a flower that grows in everybody's garden. Okay, to the amendment. Anything further? Ready for the question? Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Motion on the floor. Any further discussion? We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Item 10B, additional funding request facility repairs to City Hall building and the RCMP Detachment building.
While Kevin's moving to the mic, I would like to formally introduce Kevin Bamber. He is our new manager of fleet and facilities. He's been with us for about a year, but we're happy to have him. He's got a wealth of knowledge in both areas. So,
Welcome to council.
Thank you. Through the chair to council, the additional funds that we're asking for to complete the repairs for both the RCMP building and for City Hall here. The RCMP building, we've added a number of offices and other additional space in the basement, and it needs a larger capacity and volume to be able to accommodate the offices that are in the basement now. In the past, I think there was just a gym and some open area. So because of the offices, there needs to be more airflow. For City Hall here, we have these air handling units or makeup air units on the roof of the two annexes. And beside each of those air handling units is an air conditioning unit. The current geothermal, I would use an analogy that's kind of like your heart for the building that provides circulation for the building, in actually the form of a fluid that comes through all these radiators in the building and provides heat to the building. The makeup air units or the air handling units, I would liken that or use the analogy of they're the lungs of the building. They provide the fresh air to the building. Inside those makeup air units are both air conditioning coils and electric heat. So when they're bringing the air in, they can either cool it or heat it depending on the outside air temperature to bring into the building to circulate fresh air through the building. It would be no different than your home. If it's a very energy efficient home, you need a makeup air unit in your home. Typically it's in the furnace room, be a vanny or some other type of makeup air unit to circulate the air in the home so it's not stale. In a very energy efficient home, there's no way for that air to get out. So that's why you have to circulate the air. And for all commercial buildings, they need that air circulation in them. They usually have a furnace, which we have, and they need the makeup air unit to circulate the air throughout the building. And that's why we're asking for these additional funds so we can complete the hookup for these two items.
Good. Councillor Billingsley.
Thank you. I move that City Council approve the spending up to $28,000 from the contingency reserve for required facility repairs to City Hall building and the RCMP Detachment building for the HVAC.
Moved by Councillor Billingsley. Any discussion? Councillor Blatz.
Through the chair to either Sue or Kevin, it says that for City Hall, the MUA units on the roof of both new extensions were installed but never hooked up or operated. Does that mean that we've never actually had like a functioning HVAC unit here?
Through the chair to answer your, sorry, I
Sorry,
can't see
I'll move closer.
Councillor Blatz. There is an air conditioning unit on this rooftop, and it's for this chamber only. So there's one air conditioning unit for this entire building, and it's for this room. So all the other rooms that are made of glass and get a lot of direct sunlight have no air conditioning.
Oh my gosh. Okay, thank you. That explains.
Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you. Through the chair to Kevin. Given that we're bringing together, I guess, two systems, marrying two systems, are we confident that the thermal controls in the MUA and air conditioning units are going to align and talk to one another appropriately?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen.
Nielsen's good.
Sorry.
No problem. I've been called lots worse than that.
We've got experts that we're bringing in the HVAC control system areas, and they're going to help us to make sure that they do align and work together. That is part of the problem for the RCMP building, is the old controllers didn't work with the new system we're putting in, so we had to buy new controllers, which wasn't thought of originally, or they thought they could reuse it. Hopefully now, nothing's changed in the building since those were installed, so it should all function once it's hooked up. It just needs to be all hooked up and running. Why it was never turned on, I don't know.
Okay. And my second question, Kevin, is related to, so they're older. Not as old as Bill and I, but pretty close. Anyway, is there any concern? Have they been fired up? Do we know that they're operational and they're functioning and all that right now?
One of the units we were able to test fire and start it up and check it. The other unit, we weren't able to do that. But we can, we spun the motor and we can do certain things, but we have to replace even the belts that were on the fan motors and stuff. I think the annexes were built 2005 or 6, so they just been in the elements the whole time and never been on a monthly inspection. So there are a few loose nuts and bolts and things for sure that we'd have to.
Do you have any concern that we'll be coming back to have further conversations on this if once we vote on this dollar value?
Based on the vendor coming in and the contractor coming in and giving us an estimate of what's needed based on their initial startup, I think we're pretty confident that we'll be within a few dollars.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to the city manager. Sue, does the RCMP kick in any money, or is the building our total responsibility? Or through to, oh, I'm sorry.
Through the mayor to Councillor Elliott, the building, the RCMP building is a city building and therefore our responsibility.
Thank you. And just to share, I shared with council when the geothermal went in, when this building was being renovated, was our understanding as council at that point in time that the geothermal would heat the building in the wintertime and would cool the building in the summertime. So all those furnaces or whatever that are in the basement would be doing one or the other, and that's what we were led to believe. So I was not even aware that there was air conditioning units on the outside that weren't hooked up. So, but that's way back when. So, thank you.
And I'm impressed you remember that far back.
Anything further? We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thanks very much. Item 10C, Waste Management Services Request for Proposal. Welcome, Sean.
Morning, Council. So the purpose of the report is to provide Council with recommendations from the Waste Management Services Request for Proposal. As you know, at the August 22, 2022 regular Council meeting, Council approved motion 330/22 to direct administration to investigate contracting landfill services. Public Works went out with a request for proposal for management services on December 21st, 2022 and received 4 responses. During the proposal evaluation, it was determined that new provincial legislation for an extended producer responsibility program may impact recycling services in the community. Administration requires additional time to investigate the impact and direction of this legislation, and is thereby seeking approval to enter into and negotiate terms of waste collection services with possible recycling and organics collection services with the highest evaluated proponent. Administration has confidence there will be minimal disruption moving to contracted waste collection services.
Councillor Aberley.
Thank you. I move that City Council directs administration to enter into negotiations for the waste management services contract with the successful proponent.
Moved by Councillor Aberley. Councillor Billingsley.
Thank you. Through the chair to administration, currently at the recycling center, we have people from, or employees from that department that do clean up, do whatever needs to be done. How will that be affected, and who will be taking care of the recycling center?
So for now, the recycling center will continue to operate as it has been until we can investigate the EPR program.
So we would still have city employees taking care of the day-to-day things that need to be done there?
Correct.
Okay.
Sean, can you speak to about how many hours staff are there?
Yeah, roughly on any given day, staff are there 3 to 4 hours, cleaning up mostly cardboard, but other messes that get left behind. And we're also going in on weekends and paying overtime for the same thing.
Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you. Through the chair, Sean. It's indicated that we had 4 responses were received. Were all 4 compliant, and were all 4 considered in the negotiations?
Yes, all 4 were considered and evaluated by a team of 4 staff.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through to Sean. Sean, with the bins that we rent, the individual bins that residents rent, who will be controlling those costs? Will that be for the contractor, or will that be the city that still owns them?
The city will still own this.
So the pricing per month that we pay currently, will that still be the city that determines how much we pay, or the contractor?
The city.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further? Councillor Nielsen.
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Councillor Aberley.
Thank you, Mayor Gandam. Through the chair to Sue. I know it's written, it's up in our report that we got, but I just want it vocalized for anybody who may be watching as to the personnel that are currently looking after waste management and that area. Thank you. Yeah, where will there be jobs lost because we have brought somebody else in to look after our waste management? Thank you.
Through the chair to Councillor Aberley. There's a couple of things noted in the RFD. So staff will be repurposed out to the landfill. There's a lot of activity that happens out there that we need better control of. Looking through this highest evaluated proponent, there will in the future be a cost savings, but right now, as we would need to potentially look at buying new bins, etc., the price will remain the same, and so there will be no change to services right now, but there will be increased levels of service out at the landfill, and staff will be retained.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Blatz.
Hi there. Through the chair to someone that can help me. So in the evaluation criteria, it says for value add that there's community involvement, maintaining current staff complement, sponsorship, naming rights, and advertising. What would a waste management services company need? Like, what does the naming rights mean? Like, does that mean that, like, they would name buildings after their waste management company? So I just want to know, like, why that's part of the criteria.
Through the chair to Councillor Blatz, it's just an opportunity. So if proponents come in and say, yes, we'd love to sponsor the recycling center in our company name, it was their willingness to participate in our programs. And so we just, we evaluate the value add. We give examples so that people understand what we're looking for from value added.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Nielsen.
Through the chair to administration. So the negotiations, I'm assuming, will lead to a conversation coming back to council relative to what has been negotiated. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, no, we would look at signing the contract with a guarantee that it's not going to cost any more right now. We could bring it back to council if you wish. The problem comes with the ERP changes that have happened. We need to go back compared to the original RFP that was received and renegotiate some of the start dates of certain things or put criteria around some of those options.
So help alleviate my concerns then, please. We just heard the number of hours and overtime hours that were going into the recycling center. We talked about staff relocating out to the landfill to increase level of service there. And then we talk about home waste pickup. And I'd like to see a full cost analysis of what it was costing us before when we manned completely the recycling center versus where we're at now versus where we're at in the final negotiated piece. I don't want to lose comparative numbers in relation to the comment that Councillor Aberley put forward, that yes, we'll save these positions for people to be transferred, but that's got to be factored into the cost of delivering and doing home waste pickup, although their workload has gone somewhere else. They were once in waste management, so we're really adding cost to the city in another portion of the city's budget. Does that make sense?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Nielsen, we can certainly bring that all back if council wishes to see it. We're running with a vacant position right now, 2 vacant positions, and we have another vacant retirement coming up this June. So we would not, although we're repurposing some people to a different location for efficiencies, that will automatically increase the level of service out there. We will not expect it to cost us more, but we can bring that back in the report.
Following this motion, you can make a request for information or a formal information request. And then council can decide whether they're going to direct administration for that information.
But if they're into negotiations that won't come back to council, the request for information is basically null and void, is it not?
There's a motion on the floor right now. So if council needs that information to move forward, they can defeat this motion and then have that formal information request before that motion is carried.
So the motion is on the floor.
Correct.
I'd like to make an amendment to the motion then. I would like to include that council is informed of the negotiation outcomes along with a cost analysis of waste management operations. Suggesting I remember what I said. The council is informed of the negotiation outcomes along with a cost analysis pre and post. Pre and post what? Waste management operations. And if I could just comment on that, Mr. Mayor. I think one of the previous discussions we've had is in relation to changes at the recycling center, and lots of community concern expressed for sure, and there was concern that we could save money by changing the operations at the recycling center. But as Sean just stated, we're still absorbing a fair number of personnel costs related to keeping it the way it is. And so I think it's important. I think it would be important to the citizens to know that we are being thorough in our cost estimates moving forward. Oh, that's blither. Thank you.
The motion that we're voting on right now, not to the amendment, is based on home pickup.
Correct.
Does it have anything to do with our recycling center or the operations there?
Not at the moment.
Okay. So I'm failing to see where the two are being tied together here.
I'm making an assumption here based on then that personnel will be redirected from the recycling center. Sean indicated that the recycling center will continue, I'm assuming, until the negotiations are completed, which then implies that once the negotiations are completed, there may be impact on other portions of the service.
We're waiting on clarification on legislation with the new EPR that's coming out, the extended producer responsibility, which doesn't have anything to do with the home pickup that's happening right now. There wasn't supposed to be anybody at the recycling center. It was supposed to be unpersonneled. But because people aren't capable of separating their recyclables, the city has to go in there and clean up after them. So that's separate from what's being proposed here for the home pickup. Councillor Aberley.
Thank you, Mayor Gandon. Through the chair to Sue, I believe. And I was going to refer to this extended producer responsibility program with the potential of changing of the recycling and that. So it sort of does, my question did go into that. Do we have an estimate, the way I'm understanding it, so I guess, am I understanding it correctly? We're looking at our home pickup, so that is the garbage collection that comes once a week. There will be no changes to that, and currently no changes to how we recycle our recyclables. Therefore, my question is, how do we have an estimation of when we would understand better this recycling legislation that's coming in, and whether that or not that's going to impact the funding?
Through the chair to Councillor Aberley, administration has started working with the City of Lacombe and Camrose, who are also very interested in this legislation, and so our mayors have started a lobbying brief to go to the government to ask to be included in the new legislation. There are a number of pieces in the legislation, and all three communities read it slightly different, so we do need to get a better handle on what that looks like, and then bring that whole thing back to council at a later date for approval.
And then just to follow up, if I may, would that then impact, like, are we expecting there to be an impact to this agreement into which we could be signing if we're asking them also for recycling purposes? Is that written into that agreement that could change?
So that is part of the negotiations. We need to get the garbage collection finalized and approved. We need to work through the extended producer responsibilities, and then we would renegotiate. We would have updated costs potentially on which route we went, and we would bring that piece back to council. We also need to look at the compost and figure out what's happening with that, how long it would take to get bins. We can't sign those pieces of the contract right now because we're not able to start them right now. So we would be bringing those back separately, and then part of the negotiations would be, ensuring that the proponent holds their prices for X number of months.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Councillor Billingsley.
Thank you. Through the chair to administration, the amendment doesn't specifically speak to the recycling center or even identifies it. But there is something in there that might be a benefit to council in the sense that there's a cost analysis of pre and post waste management operations. So in other words, then we can see that, okay, this does make sense to contract this out because of the cost difference and the benefits that will be to the city. So I'm in favor of this.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm speaking in favor of the amendment as well. In the next steps, it does say that the administration will negotiate terms of the contract with the successful proponent for automated curbside waste collection and future adoption of recycling and automated curbside organics. So to me, we should know all the financial implications. Are we going to save money on all of those? So I think a cost analysis is a good thing so that we can make a very decisive decision. Thank you.
Councillor Aberley.
Thank you, Mayor Gandemer, through the chair to council. I don't have an issue with the amendment if we're looking at waste management of our household pickup. My concern is if we're going to look into recycling and compare what we did 3 years ago to what we're currently doing to what we may be doing in the future, because I don't think that they are similars because we don't have the end picture yet. So for me, if it's looking at waste management, household garbage pickup, for lack of non-recycling pickup, 100%. But I would caution us putting extra work into a recycling if we're wanting to make it part of this agreement, because they're not connected yet, is my understanding.
They're not connected because we don't have a full picture of what that legislation change is going to be with EPR.
Exactly.
Okay. Anything further to the amendment? Those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Motion on the floor. Any further discussion? We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Looking for a motion to go into closed session. Councillor Blatz, those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you.
there's restrictions into the availability, will that be part of the report?
That I don't know. My intention was it would not be available.
Okay.
Period. Because currently, from my understanding, is anybody can buy it, you just have to show ID. Well, like I say, what I observed were people who certainly weren't going out for a walk or were concerned about bears.
Right. Thank you. May I have a follow-up, please? Is it possible for me to add that line in there as to what restrictions might look like? Is it a full-out restriction, or is there, and I'm going to use a horrible example, is you can have a registered firearm versus, so if somebody was in and able to look at a bear spray for reasons, is it possible for me to ask that addition to this request for information versus a full-out restriction in our community completely?
Would that then come back in the options from administration?
And that's what I'm asking, is that I can see me in December asking that question again if I didn't see it. If it was if other options weren't available for me, it was a yes or no for bear spray in the community, I could see me asking that question as if there's other ways. So I just wanted to avoid further delay in December.
Through the chair to Councillor Aberley, we plan to look at a plethora of options and ideas around it. So specifically, you wanted us to investigate not total restriction, but
What a potential might look at a non-total restrictions in our community.
so maybe an increase of what's currently required. Maybe, yeah, we would, absolutely. So we would look at things like they could declare that they are heading out of town going camping, and then if they were caught in town without it, like we'll look at all of the options and bring those back as part of the report.
And I think one of the questions I ask is whether it's right or wrong, make sure that we're looking into individuals who use bear spray as protection for their personal protection when they're walking. I know many women or people who feel vulnerable will also keep that on their person, and I would just like to ensure that that discussion is sort of at least brought up in that investigation, because I could see me asking that in December.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Councillor Blatz.
Yeah, I was actually going to make an amendment to the motion because I completely agree with everything that's in it. I think that I would just like to include the wording of restrict the sale and the illegal use of bear spray, because let's say somebody was walking on a trail and they ended up spraying a bear. Not, I wasn't going to say bear, I was going to say mountain lion, because we have had mountain lions in Peace Hills Park. So I was going to say the illegal use of bear spray, because it would be kind of awful if you sprayed it and then all of a sudden the cops came and were like, well, there's this bylaw and you weren't supposed to use it at all, so too bad.
Go ahead.
I don't know if that was a amendment to the motion, but I would not be in favor. At this point, it's just options of what those, what it may look like.
Sure.
To me, we're debating stuff that we haven't even been brought forward with information yet.
Currently, the amendment is to include illegal use of bear spray. So we'll be voting on the amendment and then carrying on with the motion on the floor. I understand your,
Okay.
Yeah.
Clarification, then if it's legal, does that change the option so then an outright ban then is not an option? Right? Because it's not illegal in the criminal code, Alberta criminal code, from my understanding, to own bear spray. So if you have that, therefore, the outright ban is not a possibility as of an option if you put that amendment in.
But it's still coming back for options regardless.
Right, but she's saying that it's to have legal, and if that's the case, that eliminates total.
Sue can.
Through the chair to Councillor Billingsley, I don't believe that it does eliminate it totally because you can buy it in other communities. So you could still have a restriction that you can't buy it here, but you could buy it in another community and then only use it in the city limits as per described, whatever council settles on.
Yeah.
I would hope that if I went in, if I was walking down the street and I sprayed somebody with bear spray, I'm being charged regardless as I'm using a weapon, regardless of what it is.
Right.
Amendments on the floor. Anything further? To the amendment, those in favor? Opposed? Defeated. Back to the motion on the floor. Anything further? We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Item 15C, Rural Renewal Application Update. Welcome, Vern.
Good morning. Earlier this year, Council hosted a presentation from local business owners inquiring about the city's status under the Rural Renewal Program. This program, recognized through the province of Alberta, allows businesses to directly recruit international candidates to fill jobs. We did submit an application to the province to have Wetaskiwin added to the list of designated communities under this program, and our application was initially declined. The concern from the province was that we didn't have enough documented support from settlement service agencies and those folks that will readily help to accommodate and settle the people when they arrive here. The concern was that with this program in other communities, such as Brooks, for example, where they've had a lot of success with this program, the ability of Wetaskiwin, through what we were able to communicate in our application to accommodate the settlement services of more than 100 people, could be problematic. As we were preparing the application process, we did reach out to a number of settlement service organizations, some based in Edmonton, some based rurally, as well as some of the organizations within the community that provide similar types of services. We either didn't get a response from those agencies outright, or we heard from those agencies that they are at full capacity or are unable to provide services to Wetaskiwin. So that would leave the responsibility for the administration and handholding of all of those applicants coming to the community on the Economic Development Office that is responsible for the application for a term of 3 years. So my recommendation is that we do not further proceed because the organization does not have the capacity to handle that level of work.
Looking for a motion to rescind or cease, or what is it that you're looking for?
At this point, just bringing the information back to council as we were asked to explore designation under this category.
So if there's nothing further we can do, we can just accept this as information and carry on. Okay. Councillor Elliott, any further discussion? We'd be communicating this back to the organization that came to the city looking for support or help?
We've been communicating with that delegation regularly.
Perfect.
Since that presentation.
Perfect. Anything further? We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thanks, Vern. Item 15D, Kevin Lonsdale, resignation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to bring to council's attention that I did receive a resignation letter from Kevin Lonsdale on April 17th. This triggers an automatic by-election unless council directs us otherwise. We have put together an RFD for council's consideration. The first option, administration could request a ministerial order from the Municipal Affairs to either extend the time for filling the vacancy to the next general election or to reduce quorum for council. There are several options in there, but those were the only two that made sense. And if council does not wish to exercise either of those, then option 2 would be to hold the election on August 15th, 2023, which is 120 days after we receive the resignation letter, or request administration to seek approval from Municipal Affairs to extend the election deadline. The date we chose to be least disruptive is September 18th. And that would help ensure that all of the voters, the voting public is back from their summer vacations and able to vote and participate in the by-election. So next steps would depend on which options were chosen by council. Because there are a couple of options, we did not speak to the costs of a by-election, although I know that might be of interest for council. We had estimated approximately $30,000, but depending on the availability of returning officers and the direction of council, we would come back on May 8th with a more detailed cost analysis and a request for funding for the by-election if that is the way council chooses to go. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Billingsley.
I move that City Council directs administration to hold the election as per the legislated 120 days.
Moved by Councillor Billingsley. Any discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Billingsley.
Thank you. I think it's important that we get this as quick as possible. The concern of people on holidays, I would assume, could be alleviated that we would have advance polls. So if somebody is going on holidays, they would be able to vote in advance of some form. We had 2 lost motions today, and I think that it's very important that we get back up to our number 7 as soon as possible.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just say I do not agree. I think we wait till September until everybody is back, unless we want to piggyback the provincial election, and we'll have it on May the 29th, and we could do it that way. But anyway, no, I think we should wait till September. Thank you.
Councillor Aberley.
Thank you, Mayor Gandam. Through the chair to council, I'm struggling with my decision on this motion. I agree with Councillor Billingsley that getting this over sooner rather than later for our benefit is a good thing. I worry about the timing being in August, not only our residents, citizens, voters being away, but also what it may put, the extra workloads that it may put on our administration due to it typically being a summer holidays. We meet less often as a council in the summer as one of those reasons, and so I think that I am going to vote not in favor of this, looking also at the staff details into that. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Should we accept the resignation before we decide on a by-election?
I don't think we need to. I could be wrong. I think council, like a member of council's resignation is effective the date that it's given to the CAO. It doesn't need to be accepted, but I could be wrong. I would be looking for.
Thank you.
Through the chair, we did have that as a motion number 1, just to accept as information. But of course, any member of council can change a motion. Yeah, we could do it second.
Councillor Blatz.
I echo what Karen's concerns are with August, because it is right after August long weekend too. So I just have concerns with the date, just because people might not be coming back from holidays yet. So I do have concerns about that. So I will not be in favor of that part of the motion, but I do also get confused because the first part of the motion says to accept the letter of resignation and then hold the election. So I'd also like to see that be 2 separate motions.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question. Sometimes the province has dovetailed with municipal elections. Would it be possible to dovetail with them and maybe save $30,000 if we had the election at the same time as the provincial election, or is that just too soon? Thank you. I guess that's through to the CAO.
Through the chair to Councillor Elliott, the opposite is the norm, where the province will jump in on a municipal election. I do not believe there's legislation in place to allow us to jump onto theirs, and it is extremely tight timeline, so I don't know that we would be able to meet those deadlines.
I also think that we should wait until September for the by-election. So if there's nothing further, I'll call the question. This is to hold the election, Councillor Billingsley's hold the election on August 15th, 2023. Those in favor? Opposed? Defeated. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I would move that the City Council directs administration to request a minister's order as per Section 166 of the MGA to set the date for the by-election to September 18th, 2023.
Moved by Councillor Elliott. Any discussion? We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried unanimously.
And Mr. Mayor, I would move that City Council receive the letter of resignation of Kevin Lonsdale dated April 17th, 2023, and received on April 17th, 2023 as information.
Moved by Councillor Elliott. Any discussion? We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Item 15E, Heritage Museum Road closure. Councillor Aberley.
May I be excused for pecuniary interests, please?
Yes. Go ahead.
I would like to defer this motion to the next council meeting.
Okay. Do you need anything from us? Have it as a notice of motion.
Hello. So we did speak just during the break to see if it's okay with council. We did a motion that City Council directs administration to bring a report back on the open microphone request by May 8th, 2023. Just in consideration of their timelines and how quickly, I think that was, administration was okay with bringing that information then for the road closure request.
I'm good with moving that.
Okay.
We can, I'll have Juanita put it up on the screen.
Yeah. Can I say for the road closure? Because there was 2 open microphone.
Pardon me.
Perfect. Any discussion? We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Item 15F, governance session. Council had directed administration to investigate the opportunity to host a governance session dealing with elected officials and then engaging the public on council's role, what they can have done, and just we've got some information coming back from administration and looking to see if council wants to pursue it or not. Go ahead.
So, through the chair, all of Council Vern's here to answer any specific questions. We did look into the option of running it in June before the break, as council had requested, but it was not going to be feasible to line up speakers, etc. So administration is hoping to, if council does still want to pursue something like this, to hold it in October. And then it would give administration time to connect with sponsors, to get the word out to participants, and to line up all of the speakers that would be at the session. And then we did revise the numbers when we looked at it down to 250 participants. And then what was the final budget estimate? 135?
Yes.
Yeah, $135,000. So if council does decide to go forward with this, we would need a motion to fund it from contingency, which is where we fund our unplanned or unbudgeted events that happen throughout the year. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. Through to Sue or to Vern, is the 135 a net cost, or does that, will there be revenue as well so that the cost will be reduced?
That number is reflective of the gross cost of the event. We have discussed revenue opportunities through participation fees and sponsorship as well.
Thank you.
Councillor Billingsley.
Thank you. I really struggle with spending $135,000 at this point of being net until we get some other income. When we've made some tough decisions, and I know this is a one-time cost, but whether it's the handy van and other things that we have chosen to make cuts to, and yet I'd like to know what the benefits would be to our citizens for spending this kind of money when we're cutting services that we've all heard loud and clear were not very popular.
There's no motion to pursue this. I'll just have a motion to accept as information, and we will carry on. Councillor Billingsley.
I move to accept Vern's report as information.
Moved by Councillor Billingsley. Any further discussion? We're ready for the question. Those in favor? Carried unanimously. Anything else from administration?
No, there is not.
Okay. Meeting adjourned at 11:56. Thank you very much. Council will reconvene at 1 p.m. for P&T.